Okay, so I'm recording this for a second time because I recorded this once before and I didn't like how I told the story. Felt like I was jumping around a lot and I was missing parts. So I've got some notes here to try and keep me on track. But this is the story of how I almost died. Um, it's it was not a single event. It was more like there was a period of time where I could have died. Um, and the ramifications of that has affected me uh, up until this day. So I guess a little bit of explanation beforehand. I was a pretty healthy kid. I think my mom said I had some colic as a baby, and I had like a predisposition to getting strep throat. I got strep throat a lot as a kid. And in high school, I was healthy. I wasn't the most athletic or fit, but I was doing okay. But I get to college. This is fall of 2018, and I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be like a new chapter in my life. I'm gonna have a great time. I'm gonna make a bunch of friends, and it's gonna be great. And I'm gonna do well in school, and I'm gonna, you know, really do well in all facets of my life. And I notice, a couple weeks in to my first semester that I'm starting to get abdominal pain, um, and abdominal pain that wasn't going away. It would start like probably 30 minutes to an hour after my first meal of the day, and then it wouldn't, like as it sort of went on through the weeks and months, it would stay the entire day. So it would start like right after my first meal, and it would stay the entire time. And I was getting it was very frustrating because it wasn't super um, painful. I'd say on the painful scale, it usually only got to like a 5 or a 6. If it was really bad, it would sometimes get to like a 7 or 8. Um, but it wasn't like so awful. Um, but the problem is that it was every day. It started to be an everyday thing where I would just have this pain in my abdomen, and it would be sort of right um, above my belly button, right in that sort of upper ab area, and it just made me not want to do anything. Like I was like, oh, I'm in pain right now, and I don't really want to go out and be social, um, or do my schoolwork. That's when I really started struggling uh, in school, and that was one of the symptoms of what I had. What else started happening was I started to get really tired, like really fatigued, um, and to the point where I would go down and or go to the gym on campus, and I would try and run on the treadmill, and I would get like a minute or two into jogging and legitimately have to stop the treadmill because I was so out of breath. And this sort of fatigue had come on over such a long period of time that I didn't think it was weird. I was just thinking like, oh, because I'm being not active or being sedentary because of the fact that I'm in pain, I'm just, out of shape. Where, wherein, if this just were to happen one day, I would be like, oh, something is really fucking wrong because I can't jog for more than a minute without, you know, keeling over and heaving, trying to catch my breath. But I was just like, oh yeah, that's normal. It's just I'm a little bit out of shape. One thing that, or another thing that also started happening was I would wake up most days and my arms would be dead. Um, that's kind of a common thing if you sleep weird, or if you sleep like with your arm in a weird position, you will, the blood will get cut off and you'll wake up and it'll be dead and you have to like adjust your position and shake it to get it to come back to life. The thing was, not only was that happening almost every day with my arms, it also started happening with my legs. Like I would wake up and I would not be able to move my legs. And I remember one morning I had a morning class. It was me and my roommate who were both sleeping in our dorm room, and my alarm went off for my morning class, and we had lofted bunk beds, and my leg was dead, and I was like, oh, I'll just try and step down the steps to turn off my phone. And I tried to put weight on my dead leg, and it just buckled, and I fell down out of my bed. And that woke my roommate up. He's like, what the fuck just happened? I was like, oh, sorry, I just fell. And I turned off my alarm. Like, that should have been, like, any sane person would have been like, something is really wrong. You need to see a doctor. And I was seeing doctors, but really only for my abdominal pain, because that was what was really annoying to me. Um, Another symptom that I was getting was I got something called um, pica, which is the sort of tendency and craving to chew on and eat things that aren't food. And for me specifically, it was ice. Ice is technically a food, but they still categorize it as pica, and specifically it's called uh, pagophagia. I would go down to the basement where we had like the ice machine in our dorm, and I would fill up my water bottle completely full of ice, and then just fill it the rest of the way with, or like whatever space is left with water, and I would just chew on ice constantly. It would like I could not have a drink without chewing on ice. Um, Along with the extreme fatigue, I began to start seeing stars. And it's when I say see stars, it's more like your vision starts to just go gray a little bit. Um, it's kind of hard to explain. You don't really see stars, but if you've ever, you know, started to if you know what I'm talking about, then uh, you understand. I know that's not a great description, but eh, oh well. Um, and this was happening throughout. These symptoms were happening all throughout my freshman year or my first year. And during that time, I was seeing doctors, but I was only really seeing doctors for the abdominal pain because that was what was really bothering me because that was an everyday thing. Like I could get around the extreme fatigue by just not doing anything active, or I could get around the eating ice because I'm like, oh, it's just eating ice, how's that harmful? Um, so I went and saw like a naturalist doctor. She gave me like, probiotics and like little gastric stress tinctures of like mint and chamomile. That didn't do anything. I saw a local GI doctor, or actually I didn't even see a doctor. I saw a registered nurse, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you've got like acid reflux. We'll give you some, uh, you know, PPIs, which are like acid reducing meds." That didn't do anything. I Then I saw a doctor in um, like on campus, and he sort of had a similar approach. He's like, yeah, it's probably acid reflux. Um, Meanwhile, I wasn't really telling anyone about the other symptoms. I was just because I thought that they weren't important. Uh, but eventually, people started noticing, specifically like the other symptoms, like the extreme fatigue. Um, like I that summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I worked as a camp counselor, and we before camp started, if you wanted to use the lake, you had to pass like the swimming test. The swimming test was pretty easy. You swam through like a couple of buoys, and then you had to tread water for 5 minutes, and it was in the shallow part, so like you didn't drown. And I was doing it, and I was treading water, and I realized, oh, if I was not in the shallow end, I would be drowning right now because I physically cannot keep, I cannot tread water. I'm so tired, and I was standing on the shallow in the shallow end, just moving my arms. Uh, Luckily, I never went in the water when I was at camp. Um, but yeah, like other counselors were starting to be like I couldn't go on like walks. Like, yo, something is wrong. And I'm like, no, it's just because you know, I'm not in shape. Like, God, I was such a fucking idiot. Um, and eventually, my dad was like, you should get some blood work done. I'm like, all right, fine. By this time, it is sophomore year in the fall. So this has been going on for about a year now. And I go into a clinic on a Friday, like Friday afternoon, to get blood work done. It was like a normal blood work, like red blood cell count, things like that. And I go home. Next day is Saturday, and we have a football game, a home football game, because I went to a big football school. And they call me in the middle of the football game. Now, that should be like a red flag, considering that this was, sort of optional blood work that is super low priority. The fact that they called me not on a weekday um, should have been immediately like something's wrong, and something was wrong. They called me, I didn't pick up, but I saw that they called, and I saw that they left a voicemail being like, you have to call back right now. So I, stepped out and called them back, and they're like, yeah, you got to go to the hospital right now because we checked your hemoglobin, which is the type of, or it's the thing that allows your red blood cells to carry oxygen throughout your body. Normally, for a male that's like 19, 20, it's between 14 and 18. I forgot what the units are, but that's like between 14 and 18. They said mine was around a 5, and I later learned that anything below 6.5 is life-threatening. Like you're at risk of organ failure, and you're at risk of just your body shutting down, basically. Uh, so I don't know how long I was at that level. I think it was for at least a couple months that I was below that 6.5 mark. Now it's a little bit so like I like to say, oh yeah, anytime during that period of time, I could have just one day just shut down and died. Um, I that might have been the case, but because what had happened over such a long period of time, my body had time to adjust to it and compensate for the fact that I was not carrying nearly enough oxygen in my blood for my body to function properly. Um, but they were like, you got to go to the hospital now. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to call a fucking ambulance. I'm not paying for that. I'll take an Uber to the emergency room. So I take an Uber. I get in. I go to the front desk. I'm like, hey, they told me to come in. They said they had some shit wrong with my blood. They're like, all right, we'll come and look at it. They take more samples, and they're like, yeah, some shit is definitely wrong. We gotta figure out why. You know, because either like you're losing blood somehow. That was like the diagnosis. Somehow you're losing blood. And I told them, oh yeah, I've been experiencing abdominal pain. They're like, oh, you're probably losing it through your GI tract. And they're like, we got to get a sample. And when they say, oh, we got to get a sample from your GI tract, they don't mean, oh, wait until you need to take a shit. No, we're getting it now. So that was fun. They had me, uh, lay on my side, and doctor came in with a latex glove, and all. Well, that's then they got it. Uh, this is fucking awful. But I mean, if you're squeamish about this stuff, hopefully you didn't click on a. I don't know why you clicked on a video that said how I almost died. So, um, I guess trigger warning for medical shit. Like I'm saying that now. Um, and back up a little bit. I know I said I wasn't gonna do that, but I had actually got a stool test earlier in the year. They had ordered one, to see if there was anything wrong with see if they could like find anything, you know, bacteria-wise in my stool, and then they would also look for blood. And I didn't do that because I was like, I'm not shitting in a fucking bucket. And, I'm like 18, 19. I'm not doing that. I got too much pride for shitting in a bucket and then handing that out off to the doctor. If I did that, that probably would have saved me a lot of fucking pain. But eventually they admit me. They say, hey, you know, the law requires us to bring you back up to a hemoglobin count of 8. So they had to give me 2 bags of blood, and like we got to do like an emergency endoscopy and colonoscopy. So they had me prep that night, and to do that, they just gave me a fucking gallon jug of water, dumped a whole tub of Miralax in that, and they're like, drink this over the course of an hour. That sucked. And then that's like, it just cleared everything out. But they, and at this point, like I'd called my parents, I'd called my roommate, something like, hey, I'm in the hospital, might die, I don't fucking know. They don't know what's wrong with me. And my mom like flew out the next morning, and my roommate came by, just like be like, oh, all right, he was there. I mean, so I appreciate him for that. Um, and the next morning, so this is now Sunday morning because this all happened on Saturday. So Friday I got the blood test. Saturday this all happened. Sunday morning they do the endoscopy and colonoscopy, which went fine because they, uh, at least for me, they put me under completely. And then they bring me back into the room, and they come back and they're like, "Hey, we didn't find anything, so we don't know what the fuck's going on." We got one more test, which is called a capsule endoscopy, where you do the same prep, you clear everything out, and you swallow this pretty decently sized pill that has a camera in it in the morning, and it takes a picture like every couple seconds, and you wear a little battery pack on the uh, you know outside your clothes, and the little camera in the pill transmits the pictures to this battery pack or this like recording pack, and you wear it for the entire day, and then you go back at the end of the day and hand it in, and then they look at the photos. So I did that, and they come back and they're like, hey, we saw some lesions in your small intestine, so you got Crohn's. And I was like, well, okay, I guess we can start treatment now. So if you know what Crohn's is, like if you've seen the advertisements on TV where they're like, oh, if you have moderate to severe ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, you might be uh, able to get Skyrizi or Humira. Like, um, it's one of those autoimmune conditions that the drugs are, you know, all heavily advertised on TV, like plaque psoriasis, Crohn's, UC, um, ankylosing spondylitis, like all those autoimmune conditions. Um, they said so. They said that I had Crohn's. Right. Hey, this is me from the future, or I guess the present. But I realized as I was editing this video that I didn't really explain what Crohn's is. It's basically where your immune system starts attacking parts of your GI tract. And for me, they said it was in the small intestine, but I just wanted to let people know in case they didn't know what Crohn's was. So, all right. And they gave me some steroids, uh, not like the fun steroids, like the steroids that are they're called corticosteroids, and they reduce inflammation. So they gave me that, and that seemed to, stop whatever bleed was happening in my intestines. So I was not at a dangerous level anymore. Um, but I think eventually I did get like some iron infusions because they were still like, oh, yeah, like you're not bleeding anymore, but you're not really regaining any of your hemoglobin or your iron. So we'll set up. They put me on Humira, which I'm sure if you're in watch TV and at all these days, you'll maybe not uh, now because it's sort of an older drug. And when I say older, probably like 10, 15 years. Um, but you've probably seen advertisements for it. And they put me on that, It's like a little drug that you stick yourself and you inject it into your like a layer of fat. You do that every 2 weeks, or in my case, they bumped me up to once every week. And I was doing that, but I was still having the abdominal pain. The abdominal pain was not going away. And then, next year COVID happens, so like the doctor is not really seeing anyone. And the doctor that I was seeing, who prescribed me, who like diagnosed me and prescribed me all the meds, he's like, kind of was like, I don't want to meet with you anymore, because I put you on the medicine, you should be fine. But I was not fine. I was still having pain, and that really fucking sucked because I had pain throughout my entire college career. Fall of 2018 when I started, spring of 2022 when I ended, pain the entire way through. And it was very, very disheartening. But I made the decision, I think I talked about this in my previous video, made the decision that I was going to go see a doctor closer to home. And we did that. He did an MRI. He's like, yeah, we see inflammation here. Do you want to go through with elective surgery? And I was like, I don't know, I'll talk with a surgeon. Surgeon explained the risks. I'm like, yeah, I think that's probably the best idea because I am not doing well. Like, I'm still in pain, like most every day. They go in, they plan the surgery for spring of 2023, so like March of 2023. And I go in, they put me under, they wheel me out into the ICU, and the surgeon comes back and is like, guess what? You don't have Crohn's. You had a congenital defect called Meckel's diverticulum. And what that basically is a little remnant of your umbilical cord, whereas actually in my case, it was a big remnant that usually if you have Meckel's diverticulum, it's a little remnant of your umbilical cord that like sticks out of your small intestine, sort of floating, kind of like another appendix, but it's not like locked down. Like if you um, look at the sort of anatomy of the body, all the organs are sort of held in place by like a little film, whereas if you have a Meckel's diverticulum, that little part is floating, so it can very easily get like caught somewhere and cinched, and bad things can happen. What happened with me was I was born where that little thing that's floating that most people don't have, but if you do have it, Meckel's diverticulum, that little part was not only coming out of my small intestine, it was then the other end was attached to my abdominal wall. So like it was being twisted in such a way that it shouldn't be twisted. So my body was basically repeatedly twisting and tearing my small intestine apart, or that specific part. So it would twist and tear and then heal, and then twist and tear and heal. And that specific part got twisted and torn so much that it got immensely scarred over. And it became so hard for food to get through there that the little part of my small intestine that was right before it, like, expanded in size to compensate. And that was what was causing me a bunch of pain. So basically, I was having like mini bowel obstructions every single day. Um, and that fucking sucks, man. But they took it out, and I haven't had that pain since. Um, I do have like other health maladies that are still I'm going through today, but not related to that. But I just wanted to share my story because I think it's interesting, and it's it really affected a big part of my life. Um, I think it's important to share these stories because you just let them sit and fester in you for like forever. You got to like tell someone about it, and I've gotten into the habit of it is kind of like trauma dumping, um, but I try and treat it as more of like a funny story rather than, oh, look at this traumatic experience that I went through where I could have died and I was in pain for about 5 years. Um, but that's my story. I don't know. This is my second video. Shout out to all the guys that watched my first video. about the fact that I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Still kind of don't, but I feel like I've gotten to a better spot since then. But yeah, I hope to just post more videos just to get in the habit of doing it, of doing something like that, um, because I do want to make videos. That's uh that's that. I hope you found my story interesting, and I hope maybe if there's one thing you should take away from this is that if there is something wrong um, that's going on physically, don't ignore it, um, and don't try and explain it away. Um, it's if it's recurring and if it's like really affecting you, um, because I did that and it made me miserable. But that's that. I'm gonna stop this now, and hopefully some of you are still watching. But that's it. So, see ya.